Welcome to the Gentleman's Tribe Show, where brotherhood meets bold truth and we strip off the masks to speak into real challenges men face in business, in fatherhood, in faith, and in the fire of daily life. This isn't a podcast for surface talk. This is a sacred space for men building something real on the outside and from within. Whether you're leading in the boardroom, showing up at home, or standing at the edge between breaking and becoming, this tribe is for you.
Welcome back to the Gentleman's Tribe Show, where truth meets brotherhood and brotherhood meets truth. We take off the masks, we start being real about issues that affect men. As always, here's my guest, my co-host, I should say, Mr. Ian Miller. How's it going, Ian?
Going great. I feel like I'm the guest. You're the rock star always.
Hey, no, jeez, no. But hey, did you decorate this set? Look at all these chips and everything.
I wish I could take credit, and I just wish I won all these chips. That'd be the best part.
Well, I tell you what, I guess today, we're not talking about gambling or poker addiction today, because, we're mixing with the set. As you can tell, even the Gentleman's Tribe, maybe we need more of a woman's touch around here, but hey, you know what? This is our cave, man. No one tells us how to decorate. Am I right?
Fair enough.
All right, awesome. We have a wonderful show today. We have three excellent, amazing guests with different perspectives about leadership. But before we dive into that and introduce our guests a little bit later, how's it going, Ian? What's going on in Ian's life?
Oof. Ian's life is a little complicated right now. So, as you guys know, I'm a personal injury attorney with my firm Miller Trial Law. Right now, I'm gearing up for a medical malpractice trial that's going to keep me quite consumed for the rest of this month and away, unfortunately, for the second half of it.
A little fun fact here, Ian and I are both attorneys. I started my career in criminal defense and did some litigation.
Guilty.
Jeez. Not today, I guess. Did he made it happen? He was as slippery as the lotion that he provides to his guests because, the news broke today about Diddy, okay? But it's funny. I'm going to take my joking sense off and provide a little value here, okay, from a criminal defense attorney's perspective. What's interesting is when people see the case, there's something called burden of proof, all right? And when you're discussing burden of proof, if it's a civil case, it's more likely than not, right? It's scales tilt a little bit.
Yep.
They'll find in that favor, and likewise the other ways. Other burdens of proof, if you're out there on the street and it's 2:00 in the morning and it looks like you're trying to get into a place, maybe it doesn't appear you're committing a crime, but that's something called reasonable suspicion where an officer might come up to you and be able to ask you some questions. Now, if they see you with something where there's broken glass and you're entering that area, that's probable cause, enough evidence there. What's interesting about actually receiving a conviction in criminal defense is that it's beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. It is quite literally the highest standard that we have. So if we're going to take away someone's freedoms, someone's liberty, we make sure that's the standard. And what that means is this. If you have a doubt, and that doubt is reasonable, it's got to be not guilty. You could think somebody's guilty of a crime. You could say, you know what, I feel like they really did it. But if there's a doubt and that doubt is reasonable, it's not guilty. And that's what happened here with Diddy today. I had a chance to confer with some of my other friends that are still in the criminal defense world. God bless them. I don't know how they do that. I prefer my practice of now doing more transactional work. I deal with contracts and closings, and that's my cup of tea. But from what I gather, it actually, from the criminal law perspective, was actually a fair outcome to the trial, which I thought was interesting. What else is going on in your life right now? I know you're preparing for trial, so I'm sure you're getting plenty of sleep and hopefully getting hydration. What does that look like?
Getting hydration in, getting gym in, those are necessities, breathwork, grounding. You got to take care of you first so that you can do all the other things effectively. So daily habits.
Well, and you're a newlywed. Is there any habits there that keep you in a good spot?
Staying happy.
Well, leave it at that. Anyhow, it's all jokes aside, we, in my life, as I've shared before with the audience, we are in a battle for my 8-year-old, and a lot of good things have been happening in that battle. Now, as you know, I also had a 4-year-old son that passed away a year ago from June 30th, and it was a difficult weekend for us in the family for obvious reasons. But there's hope. There's hope on the horizon. We have a gene editor that said yes to us. They said, we're gonna develop this gene edit. And what's interesting about this endeavor is that the technology that needs to be developed, it doesn't just have the ability to save one child. It has an opportunity to affect the entire rare disease community. What do I mean by that? When we talk about gene therapies, there's two components. You have the actual therapy, whether it's a gene addition, whether it's a gene editing type of gene therapy. But then the second issue that you have are the delivery mechanisms that are also called vectors. Now, what's interesting about this is that the different body masses, such as bone mass or muscle mass, are all different type of masses where to get that gene edited into. So what needs to be developed for my child is that, unfortunately, the genetic mutation that he has affects every cell in his body. But where there's a challenge, there's also opportunity. This technology has not been developed yet. This could be a very landmark case, and this is the importance of, if anybody's out there so inclined and so called to help the cause, I would love to talk to you. We do have to raise a substantial amount of money to be able to effectuate this, but this is going to be groundbreaking for the 7% of the population that has rare disease. And I do want to remind everyone, while 7% of the population is directly affected, I don't have a rare disease, but I'm a father. My wife doesn't have a rare disease, but she's a mother. This is a community that is underserved, but by the grace of God, we live in a time where we can effectuate this change, allow this particular cause for my son to be that North Star, to get us there, to get us to the place where we can affect so many other people. But anyway, I bring that up. We were on Channel 6 News last week, being able to share the story. I'm sharing it here now with the audience members, and I will leave it there at that. But that's what's going on in the life of Brian DeCobo, along with developing the tribe, which
That's the big one
that
for both
is
of us.
our passion project. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with the tribe this week.
Yeah, so quick update on the tribe front. We've been continuing to grow. So this past Friday, we had an amazing meeting of the Boca chapter, and actually one of the leaders of that chapter is here with us as a guest today. That chapter has grown so effectively that we've had to, in order to make space for additional people, we've had to open now a Delray chapter, a Coral Springs chapter, and a Fort Lauderdale chapter. So growth is really all over the forefront of what's going on. In addition, we are going to be having an event this coming Saturday. So we are having a block party that's being thrown by the Brotherhood. We're going to be renting one of those giant blow-up water slides for the kids, and well, we tell the kids time out so the adults get their time on it too, get the GoPro, all sorts of fun stuff. Tons of barbecues, tons of tents, just a way to bond, get together with families, and that's what we do.
It is a labor of love to get the tribe together. And this is a question that I typically ask a lot of our guests, but I'm going to ask my co-host. All right? You got a lot going on in your life. You're an attorney. You're a father. You're a husband. Lord knows we're putting a lot of time into this tribe too. But tell us, how does the tribe fill your cup? What are you left with this experience that you're having within the tribe?
You know, for me, I've always considered it a passion project. I have enjoyed it from the beginning, from the inception, when we really brainstormed how to take it to what it is today and where we want to take it to. For me, it just fills my cup. Seeing how I have grown as a man being in this organization, seeing how I've helped other men grow, seeing all the back and forth with each other, growing each other, learning how to be better in areas of our lives. Every week we come on and we talk about a different topic here, and I learn something from our guests who are experts in that field. And so it's a constant positive takeaway for me, and going to the meetings for me is like the most effective therapy session in the world.
Well, that's pretty awesome. And one thing we'd also like to do is we like to play poker every once in a while on Tuesdays, right?
That does happen a good bit. I'm doubling down.
Well, don't do that against Tony. Tony, you know what I'm talking about. Tony takes all our money. Anyhow,
Tony, take your money, man.
well, I tell you what, we got a lot of fun things to talk about. We're mixing it up a little bit today, and we're pretty excited about that. But I tell you what, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to introduce our guests, and we're going to talk about a pretty awesome topic here today, one that affects many men, and that's leadership. How to be a leader to your family, how to be a leader in your business, how to be a leader in the corporate world, and even the military world. So we'll be back right after these messages, and we'll jump right into the topic. The Law Office of Brian F. DeCobo, PA, is a Florida-based legal firm that partners with individuals, investors, and business owners to help them navigate real estate deals, business transactions, and the sale or acquisition of high-value assets like yachts and aircraft. We offer strategic legal support at every stage, whether you're closing on a property, negotiating a merger, or scaling your company. For growing businesses, we also provide fractional general counsel services, giving you executive-level legal guidance without the cost of a full-time in-house attorney. Through our title and closing division, Esquire Closings, we handle real estate transactions across Florida, delivering a smooth, attorney-led experience from contract to close. We're here to make your big moves feel simple, secure, and smart.
At Miller Trial Law, we're more than just a personal injury law firm. We're your advocates during one of the most difficult times in your life. Whether you've been injured in a car accident, a slip and fall, at work, or due to medical malpractice, we're here to stand by your side. We handle the insurance claims and legal process so you can focus on healing. From coordinating your medical care to fighting for the compensation you deserve, we're with you every step of the way. Because your recovery is personal to us. If you've been injured, contact us at 833-MT-LAW for you.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories, struggles, and awakenings that shape us, side by side with men who refuse to settle, who are willing to feel, to lead, and to rise.
And we are back, and it's time to talk more about leadership.
We got some great guests for that.
We do have some great guests, but before we introduce the guest, leadership. What does that mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think it's about motivating people to get behind a common goal, to work together, to do something better than you individually could have done.
Couldn't have said better myself. Did you ChatGPT that?
Dude, come on the spot. I should have posed the question to you.
That would have been a ChatGPT answer, because that's your real best friend. That is my best friend, ChatGPT. Hey, look, if you're not using some AI, you're falling behind him. All right.
Fair enough.
Oh man, so you should do that for your prep work.
You've been telling me to get with it, ChatGPT, and I gotta get a little more on top of that.
You're burning the midnight oil, if you will. You just got to ChatGPT it. Just show up the trial, say, "Hey, Judge, here's all my questions."
Yeah, it's interesting because a competitor law firm of mine got in big trouble for drafting a memorandum of law with case citation and things like this that they served to the judge to review to decide how to answer a motion, what order to issue, and it turned out the entire thing was fabricated along with all the cases. So I'm very cautious. You got to do your homework.
And as you steward this trial prep work, that obviously is not showing leadership if you're going to be cutting corners like that. So of course we say that in jest. But now we're going to introduce the authorities on the matter on leadership that we could learn a thing or two from here today. And I'm going to start with our very first repeat guest, Mr. Joe Blazer. Say hello, Joe.
Hello, Joe.
Now that's leadership right there. That's what I'm talking about. So Joe, let's get a little deeper today. Tell us a little bit about yourself to remind your guests from last week, but also maybe a little bit about some of the leadership opportunities that you've had in your life.
Well, my name is Joe Blazer. I'm with Dex Imaging. I'm the branch manager in Broward County. We are the two-time sponsor national hockey league champion for the Florida Panthers. So,
Panthers! That's what we're talking about.
Go Panthers. I've been in leadership for the last 20 years in the office equipment and IT solutions sector. I've had the pleasure of leading in the neighborhood of a couple hundred people in total, and feel like I've learned a lot over the last 20 years from my humble beginnings as a very difficult person to work with to today, where I feel like I'm very effective at leading people toward goals that they themselves want to achieve that help us to accomplish a greater goal.
It's interesting. We're going to come back to some of those comments there. Next guest, Mr. Will Rodriguez. Oh, I'm sorry. West Point graduate.
He's very humble. He doesn't want to sit and broadcast this stuff. We're going to do it for you.
Exactly. Because if I went to West Point, I would just wear like a pin on my shirt just saying West Point grad. So anyhow, Mr. Will Rodriguez. Now that you're firmly embarrassed, kindly please tell us about yourself.
Okay, Will Rodriguez, born and raised Bushwick, Brooklyn. Never ran, never will. I served 20 years as an infantry officer, West Point grad. 20 countries, commanded units from 40 to being a deputy commander for a 1,000 cadet regiment, managed budgets from 4 to 80 million. In the process of doing those duties, also commanded in combat. The military saw it fit for me to go back to the academy, and they made me go get a master's degree in leader development and counseling and be the primary character developer for cadet organizations at West Point. After leaving the service, I am a personal safety consultant, public speaker.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you, Will. And last but not least, Mr. Todd Halls. Introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little about yourself. And I think that your profession is in lockstep with what we're doing here today.
Thank you, Brian. Todd Halls here. My business is Todd Halls Coaching, and love this topic of leadership, because I would call myself a leadership coach. That's what I got into this profession for. I've been leading people for close to 30 years, promoted to foreman early in my construction days, started our first business 26 years ago, and have had employees really ever since. It was in about 2014 through an organization called CBMC, I got introduced to this notion of leadership coaching. And it was through that I started thinking about leadership and our obligation to develop ourselves as men and as leaders. So fast forward 2019, I had a CrossFit gym at that point, and I sold the gym and then just stepped into this role as a leadership coach now that I've been doing for close to 6 years and really loving it. And so just a clarifying point, I said I've been leading people for a lot of years. It's only in reflection as I look back, I realize I was a boss. I wasn't a great leader. So that's anyhow. So I've been leading more recently than in the early years.
You know, let's unravel that topic a little bit. So you made a distinction here about the difference between a boss and a leader. So when you say that, make that distinction, tell the audience a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Sure. So I'm going to use John Maxwell talks about the 5 levels of leadership, and level 1 is leadership by position. So if you're the foreman or the boss or the crew leader, your position, that title, gives you a sense of leadership, and the people underneath you are going to follow you because you are their boss. But at the end of the day, when they clock out, if you've got an influence with them at 5, as soon as they clock out, it drops to about 0, because you've done nothing to earn their permission to lead. And it's only when you start investing in your people that they give you permission to lead them, and you can transition from this boss or leading via position to true leadership.
Oh, very good. Well, it's great to have all these different perspectives. Now, Joe, you're in the corporate world. You have a team that you're built out. Give us some tips and tricks, or give us some insight or perspective as far as what your role is there as a leader within that company.
Well, from a leadership perspective, my role really falls under middle management in our structure. I've got a person that I report to. I certainly think leadership falls at all levels of management within organizations. One of the things that, for me, I've always sought to better understand what a person's looking to accomplish in their life, and then helping them accomplish that through the employment that we're providing to them. So if they want to get married, if they want to buy a house, if they want to go on trips, I help game plan with them inside of the job, because most of the people that have worked for me are commission-based individuals, and we look at the way that they need to work to accomplish the goals they personally have. And I think anytime you invest in a person, you really find out what's going on in their life, they in turn become more apt to follow you if you're showing them ways that they can accomplish things.
It's very interesting, and it's almost, we have an interesting dynamic. We have the corporate world and the leadership with paid employees or commissioned employees, as you described,
Yeah.
And then of course, Will, from the battlefield to the boardroom, right? This is really the topic that we have here today. Yeah. And that's so good. I should have said that in the intro, and I would take credit for that myself, but that's something you came up in the green room. But what about on the battlefield? What about in your position? Is there kind of a difference, would you say, maybe from the corporate experience and the battlefield experience as far as being a leader?
Yeah, I like to differentiate. I mean, the body of knowledge that talks about leadership separates leading from managing. I mean, leaders leadership is about inspiring, motivating people to accomplish a common goal, typically in difficult situations in the military. Managing is supervising, coordinating, and manipulating resources to the accomplishment of a goal. they're two different edges of a sword. And folks refer to leadership, and they intermix both, and they're two different things. A leader needs to have good managing skills. An excellent manager has some leadership skills. But I think they're different.
So they're distinct definitions. And while they're often conflated, there's two separates.
I think so. I mean, I like to think so, that there's a difference between being a leader and being a manager. I think I like to say that leaders create value and managers count value. As far as the paradigm of making things happen.
And use the word here. Use the word inspire. A leader inspires, and do you have any? If maybe this is a question for the group. Okay, are there any for the people listening, and for myself, quite frankly, I have to be a leader in my life too in several different ways. But are there any tips and tricks as far as how a leader should hold himself out, or anything related to leadership that is a little truth bomb that you might want to share with our audience?
Okay. I think one of the most important concepts, principles about being a leader is living the standard. Because if one is asking people to do things that you're not doing, it's kind of hypocritical, and it creates friction. It doesn't look good. So I think that above all is probably a key concept when it comes to leadership is, be the standard.
Be the standard.
Can I add to that?
Of course you can.
The hardest person in the room to lead for me is me. And so you mentioned being the standard, and I think we have a tendency, and always have, it's the human condition. There's things we know we ought to do, and we decide not to. And then there's things that we know we really shouldn't do, and we decide, hey, that looks like fun, I'm going to give it a try. And all the time, there's people around us, people we're leading that are watching. And so it's important that we are super aware of that, and are intentional about our self-leadership, living the standard, as you say.
Yeah, being a standard.
I think, also a lot of times you mentioned the distinction between a manager and a leader. A manager oftentimes looks at the end in mind. We're going to accomplish X. But a leader looks at the process and helps people accomplish the process that leads to the end. They're more focused on helping develop the wider and deeper, as opposed to just focusing on the end result. And I think it's more empathetic, it's more, I want to say process oriented, because you don't really focus on, we know we're supposed to accomplish X, but let's look at what everybody's doing, and let's together as a group come together to get there. I don't know, maybe that's what you were talking about on the battlefield too. But
Oh my gosh, I'm not a process guy. I like to give folks
You don't
an
say.
end state and let people equip them and empower them, resource them to go ahead and achieve the end state. It's also very individualistic. Leadership, there's an infinite number of flavors on how folks can be leadership, exercise leadership. And it's all very innate to the individual.
And I'm hearing maybe different leadership styles, and this is actually something I, quite candidly, am going through an evolution myself in understanding in leadership. And maybe it's my grandfather was in the Air Force, and he was there during World War II. He was there during D-Day, in fact. He got the fortunate assignment of being a tow plane for the gliders that didn't have engines.
Sure.
So out of every 16 gliders that went in there, we're coming up to 4th of July, so it's probably appropriate time to talk about these things. 15 of them died. My grandfather was the lucky one, but I hear his words that, Brian, you have to earn your wings every day. And to me, that means when I'm involved in a project, or I get tapped for leadership, not infrequently, but it's also the thought process of, what can I do to contribute? Let me hop in here, let's roll.
Sure.
But I'm learning that I need to surrender more and trust more, and maybe kind of step back from the actual involvement and adopt the role of oversight. And when I hear you two discussing the different management styles, this is actually a personal question I have of mine. Should I be process oriented where I'm setting up these streams and then putting them in there for these streams to flow, but you are less process oriented where it's kind of, let's get them together and organically it'll kind of work itself out?
It always depends on the task too, because some require,
Right.
a lot of process.
But I think a big part of leadership is also accountability
Oh yeah.
in both directions.
Yeah.
I think there has to be an accountability factor because you're giving that freedom, you're giving that thing, as you talked about, that mush to get on plane, but there has to be accountability back to the process itself or to the end goal with what you're trying to accomplish, I think, as a group.
You mentioned a really important word, delegation. There's a saying in the military: you can delegate authority, but you can never delegate responsibility. It's always the leader's fault if if the organization fails, and it's the subordinate's credit if it achieves something. I mean that's a focus on the individual, not on the individuals versus the leader. But you mentioned that delegation, that saying popped right in my head because say it way too much.
Todd, I think you're going to hop in here. I think you're.
So, well, the question is, should you be doing the process or should you be delegating? And the answer is, I don't know.
Not a right answer.
But if I'm looking at my friend Will from what he just told me, he probably should not be doing the process. It sounds like he doesn't like it and he's going to find it draining of his energy and not leave him at his best for other things.
I will delegate to you.
And so I think part of our responsibility as leaders is understanding the things that we are good at and the things that we're great at, and knowing the things that just tend to suck the life out of us. Mm-hmm. And there's some times, depending on situation, where the things you're good at, you have to do them so you can get to doing the great things. But anytime you have something that's just an energy drain, I think as a leader, it's knowing to pass that off. And being aware of this for the people you lead as well, because it's often we put people in a position that really does not fuel their unique abilities.
That's a big point because you can pass things off, and as a leader, you got to make sure your people can handle that task. Part of that is a development piece and giving tasks to individuals that they can accomplish or cut their teeth on. But you need to build a safety net as a leader so that there isn't a failure that hurts the organization. You can fail sometimes and it's a positive, but sometimes a failure is unrecoverable. All right, and you don't want to delegate those tasks to individuals that can't handle them.
Fantastic.
I heard the saying this last weekend: fail fast, fail cheap, fail forward.
Boom, boom, boom. And I tell you what, and as we're talking about this, we're thinking about leaders. Is it nature versus nurture? Is there an innate ability to be a leader, or is this something that, no matter who's out there listening or even men among the table, is this something that can be developed, or is it a little bit of both? What are our thoughts there?
Okay. All right. Who wants to take it on?
I certainly think it is a little bit of both. I think you can have people like the gentleman at the table today, Todd especially. You can have coaches, you can have mentors, you can have those kind of people who helped mold your thought process and your approach. Because I really believe in approach behavior, and how you walk into a conversation with somebody dictates whether they view you as a helper or somebody that's a foe. It's just very direct. And I think a lot of times people like Todd, and certainly like Will in directing cadet behavior and morale and things of that nature, it puts you in a position when you have somebody that can be a thought leader in your head a little bit when you're thinking about things, that it reminds you of things as a leader that you might then step forward and act differently than you would have. So I think there's a little bit of nurture in that. But certainly some people are just born to be great too.
The literature says in the 1900s, the way leadership was taught is that we looked at biographies and we looked at character qualities, and that was how we defined leadership. If you wanted to be a leader, you needed to be physically courageous. You needed to be smart. Later in the 20th century, it became, the approach was that you could teach leadership. I think it's a combination. I think that you can teach leadership, but you got to have some fire. There's got to be some innate qualities in the individual, because some folks cannot lead a wet noodle to soup. So and vice versa, you have some folks that are super successful, but they can't manage the ins and outs. They're not detail folks. All right, they're not process driven. So it's a combination, if you know, it's my belief.
So battlefield to the boardroom, and then what was it, wet noodle to what? Man,
He's got all the great lines.
I'm stealing your lines, pal. All right.
Will's also a part-time comedian.
Okay.
What Will's saying is he likes chili.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. You know, as I'm here, I'm kind of having this epiphany as we described it, because you know, words have meaning. You know, and when we talk about leadership, it's a very kind of broad, general term. But it sounds almost, when we break this down, right, it's almost like a company. You have an outward-looking face and you have an internal operational sense, right?
Sure.
Okay. So almost what I'm hearing when it comes to the nature versus nurture, just something to spitball here. Is there something innate or unique about somebody with maybe charisma or an ability to attract, or the way they held themselves out in the image of a leader? But then also maybe the development part of the internal operational sense of some of those other leadership qualities. Any thought there?
Sure. I think I don't have science to back this up, but maybe some people are born with a tendency to be more physically courageous, or you know, to have some of these, born naturally to be others focused. And that could be the case, but I think it's more likely that in the developing years, they have people that believe in them, and so they develop self-belief and confidence. And they have people that show up and like serve them, right? And so they realize that mom's serving me, dad's serving me, the youth group leader, and so they get this notion of as a leader, they can still serve. So they've got confidence. They've learned about servant leadership because they've been served by leaders. And so, and maybe they've been around people that are great speakers and they've got a little bit more charisma. And so I think more than anything, the people that seem like they're just a natural born leader, I think rather they're a natural raised leader. Like people that taught them how to show up, taught them about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And all these things that come together to enable somebody to have the potential to be a great leader, because then even beyond that, they have to want to improve. And so then they reach out and find mentors, coaches, other leaders that they can connect with that help them on their journey.
Growth mindset, wanting to level up. But
Welcome to the tribe.
Welcome to the tribe, baby. Gosh, I'm so happy you guys are brothers.
Okay.
Anyhow, I just love this conversation we're having right now. But also, you know, as we think about this framework of the external,
Sure.
what are some characteristics of a perception of a leader that they might have? Is it charisma? Is it courage? What are some things where you look at somebody and say, you know what, this guy has it. You may not know the internal operational sense or the organized sense of actually pragmatically effectuating leadership, but what are some external characteristics that can be built upon?
You know, I think you're speaking about where that authority comes from, when someone recognizes somebody as a leader. And there's a variety of sources of that authority. You know, kings, monarchies, caste systems, you know, you're born into it. Legal systems, you know, you've got the judge. In the military, you have rank, but you also have expertise. If someone demonstrates expertise in a certain area, they automatically, everybody looks at them.
It's evidence.
It's
evidence.
When the question comes up. And then there's my favorite, which is referent authority. And this is where you develop a relationship with individuals to the degree that they respect you and defer to your authority to be in charge of that organization. So there's a variety of places that authority comes from. You know.
Well, you brought up kings and you brought up other people, so I think this is actually a question that we were spitballing around the green room.
Okay.
So, is there any historical figure that maybe speaks to you as far as saying that you appreciate their leadership style and maybe even adapted to that leadership style or have influenced you as a leader?
I'm going to defer to you, Joe. I'm going to put you in the hot seat.
It's warm.
So I can think about a better answer.
No, and we did talk about it in the green room. And for me, sports were a big part of my life growing up. Just kept me focused on other things. And I really tied to the NFL when I was a kid. And Joe Gibbs, for whatever reason, was very important to me because all the talk about him on TV and everything he was the first guy in the morning and the last guy out at night. And he led by example. He put in the most work possible to be the best leader and coach in the NFL possible at that time. And that always struck me because he was already on top of the world, but he was still trying to stay on top of the world and getting there early, being there first. And one of the things they said about him was he was brutally honest with his players. And I really found a lot in that to me that I think great leaders are not brutally honest, but honest. People don't have to look to them and go, well, they said one thing, but they did another, or they said this and it wasn't true. But that he embodied honesty. And I also mentioned Billy Graham because to me, as a child growing up in a family that Christianity was important in, Billy Graham was the stalwart. You always saw him on TV, and people looked for 80 plus years for something he did wrong, and they never found something wrong. And so he was the pinnacle of perfection if you look at it from a life perspective, and he led a very large organization in the U.S. So those are a couple of the people that I really look to personally.
Outstanding. And let's go next.
You're going to beat everybody. So I know your example, so I'm going to go ahead because you can't beat yours. My childhood hero was Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy, one of the most decorated, if not the most decorated soldier in World War II, came from very humble beginnings. His father left the family. His mother died when he was in his teens. He had almost a dozen siblings and basically had to provide for those siblings. World War II came about. The Navy turned him down. The Marine Corps turned him down. The Army took him, but the infantry would not. He convinced the infantry to go ahead and take him. Ended up being awarded the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars. Later on, he demonstrated tremendous physical courage. He always put his organization, his troops, he declined promotions to stay with his soldiers, with his buddies. Eventually they promoted him and they changed the rules so he could stay with his buddies. But he always hit me as a stalwart individual, again, from humble beginnings, ended up becoming a movie star. And was a big proponent of PTSD before the acronym existed, so that's kind of my, thought process and someone that I hold up there as far as leader goes.
Very good. Todd?
So the leader that I would most aspire to be like or live up to, it's Jesus.
There you go.
Yeah, you can stop right there. All right, that's how,
yeah. But I think you said, I like something you said in the green room about you as far as his leadership skills are concerned. You shared a story back there.
So a little bit of backstory. I didn't consciously think of leadership and leadership development until about 2013-14. I joined a group called CBMC. In 2014, I took my first leadership coach training course, and it was just eye-opening. And so CBMC is a faith-based organization, and learned some of the history about Jesus' life on earth. And so whether you're a person of faith or not, we know how powerfully he led as a servant leader. In the scriptures, which a lot of it's verified, he asked like 307 powerful open-ended questions of the people he was interacting with. But it's only recorded that he gave like 150 some directives. So really was all about empowering people with the knowledge and the skills they already have in them, but drawing them out. And so when you think about his life, I'm a person of faith. You don't have to know that there's some historical things that came up. It's recorded that he said, like, I didn't come here to be served, but to serve. And so he modeled this sense of servant leadership. How effective was it? He took a handful of men and women, led them for a few years, he left, and he empowered them to literally go change the world. our clock structure, it's BC, before Christ, and AD. Annulus, do you know it? So, like, his life was significant because he empowered a handful of men and women through his leadership style.
Yeah, that's amazing, and he led with love.
And he led with love.
He led with love, and I think for me, maybe it's because 4th of July is upon us. I think of all the great presidents the United States has had, from Washington to Lincoln, FDR, Kennedy, Reagan. It's. But I love when we're in our darkest times. The formation of a country, or a war that almost divided us, or World War II, where nothing to fear but fear itself. Those leaders where people felt, in a time of weakness, that they were the light to bring the people up and rally behind. And for me, those are some of the most inspiring leaders, because it's also, people don't remember what you tell them. You remember how they made you feel. How do you feel when you hear,
Sure.
We don't do things because they're easy. We do things because they are hard.
Yep.
Or
JFK.
when you hear the Gettysburg Address, this is our origin story as a country, and it would be great to get back to some of those feelings and those values that flow through us so strongly. But when I think of leadership, I think of the great men of this country.
The founding fathers definitely way up there. We were talking earlier, and George Washington is one who stuck out for me. Simply, earlier this year, I was in Washington, D.C. with my wife, and we were enjoying the Cherry Blossom Festival and things of this nature. And you see what was created here, the country that became. You see what he was like as a general, leading troops during a very difficult time through the winter, with freezing and losing so many troops, but keeping them together to fight on and win what was an amazing Revolutionary War, if you look back historically on it, to achieve the independence that we have, and then stepping up in his role of leading the country and being a president who, after 2 terms, didn't want to set a precedent of having a monarchy, and knew when it was time to step away to not start a new tradition and get out of the ego. So I'm impressed.
Yeah, for him to step out of the ego, sets the direction of our country. Yeah. Where would we be today if, we had a monarch? Who knows? But I tell you what, we're going to cut to a commercial break, and when we come back, we got a fun little game we're going to play. Apparently, people have been emailing the station, asking questions of us on the Tribe Show, and a lot of those questions we came across today. So we're going to play a fun little game. It's a curveball, where we're going to have a chance to kind of rapid fire some of the questions we received, and us as a tribe sitting around this fire or a poker table, we're going to get a chance to respond to. So we'll see you on the other side of this commercial break. The Law Office of Brian F. DeCobo, PA, is a Florida-based legal firm that partners with individuals, investors, and business owners to help them navigate real estate deals, business transactions, and the sale or acquisition of high-value assets like yachts and aircraft. We offer strategic legal support at every stage, whether you're closing on a property, negotiating a merger, or scaling your company. For growing businesses, we also provide fractional general counsel services, giving you executive-level legal guidance without the cost of a full-time in-house attorney. Through our title and closing division, Esquire Closings, we handle real estate transactions across Florida, delivering a smooth, attorney-led experience from contract to close. We're here to make your big moves feel simple, secure, and smart.
At Miller Trial Law, we're more than just a personal injury law firm. We're your advocates during one of the most difficult times in your life. Whether you've been injured in a car accident, a slip and fall, at work, or due to medical malpractice, we're here to stand by your side. We handle the insurance claims and legal process so you can focus on healing. From coordinating your medical care to fighting for the compensation you deserve, we're with you every step of the way. Because your recovery is personal to us. If you've been injured, contact us at 833-MT-LAW for you.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories, struggles, and awakenings that shape us, side by side with men who refuse to settle, who are willing to feel, to lead, and to rise.
And we are back. And also, it'd be nice to tell the people out there, This show is being broadcast on True Oldies, Florida. 95.3 FM, 96.9 FM, 95.9 FM, 106.9 FM, 104.3 HD3, 104.7 HD3, 107.4 HD3, depending on the area that you are in. And you know what? You can have a fun little time scanning all the channels in case you're not sure which one pops up for you. How about that? All right. Okay. Also, we are going to move it around a little bit today. So if anybody's interested also in the tribe, just putting it out there for our guys, seeing what we're about, you could always reach our office at 754-222-5111. That's my personal office, just putting it out there because we have to get better at telling the audience, how can you get in touch with us?
Yeah.
Okay? So we're going to be a little bit more mindful about that going forward and maybe mindful about how to approach us in our law practices and other various areas where we're looking for growth and alignment with the community, right? All right, so now, guys, we got a fun little game to play, and you know what? It's kind of a curveball. Freddie at the studio, who's the man, and Dawn, who I adore, like to throw some curveballs sometimes, and they said, you know what? We're going to put you in around a bunch of poker chips, and we're going to give you these questions that people have been emailing into the studio. So on these pieces of paper in front of us, there's a question on the other side, all right? And I know Will is just dying for this. Loves the curveball nature of this.
We have no idea what's on the other side.
We're going to start with you, Will. So ultimately, so
you asked the question.
Let's roll over one of these pieces of papers. Do you need your glasses? Or are you good? You're fine. Hey!
There you go.
Yours.
I like that. That's a curveball.
All right, there we go. What are some effective ways for men to build and maintain strong relationships? Great question. I'm glad I took it from you. The effective ways, two things off the top of my head. Number one, active listening. Don't wait for a person to stop talking to talk. Listen to what they're saying, understand it, and then talk. Number two, care about this individual, and not use them.
Empathy.
The understand what they're going through and try to be a ladder for them to achieve their objectives versus being a shovel and digging a hole for them. Awesome. So those are the two things off the top of my head.
I think one thing that I really like about this question is this. As I think about the tribe, what makes us different? How many times in friends group we say, hey, we're going to get together, and it never happens, right? But the intentionality of the tribe, knowing we have that meeting, and being intentional in the relationships, I think that is something very important in maintaining the relationships. Otherwise, over time, it gradually erodes with the stresses of life, right? All right, so next question. You know what? Hold on, time out. You know what we're going to do here? All right, we're going to give one of these to you, a die, and one to you, Joe. And just whoever gets the highest number goes next. All right?
Flip it on the board.
No cheating. No cheating.
Just roll it.
I don't even know what that is. Is that a king?
Cow.
Will's going to decide.
This is not.
We got a judge.
I got the jack.
King.
King?
I got the jack.
Got the jack? All right. Mr. Todd Halls.
All right.
All right, your turn to pick a question.
Let's pull out my cheaters.
How can we encourage men to speak up about their struggles without fear of stigma?
That's a good one.
That's a great
Say that
one.
again out loud.
How can we encourage men to speak up about their struggles without fear of stigma?
I really think the tribe is really something that provides that for men. You're in a safe space. You're around other people that do truly care about you. And so it's an opening for you to let go of your machismo, I would say. You let go of the hardness that a man has been taught to be.
The mask falls off.
And you can, you coined that. But you can be prostrate and just allow the feelings to come forth and deal with it. And then you've got a brotherhood that is standing there ready to catch you, but also hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of positivity in our group that comes from things just like that.
And there's some magic to it because I kind of learned this years ago as it relates to this, is that I realized younger that everyone's scared to approach somebody to start a conversation, whether it's a girl you see in a club, or maybe it's younger years, or it's somebody that might be interesting to you. You want to start a conversation. And one thing you realize, everyone's scared to approach. So why not allow it to be me? So I talk about this in the context of the fear of stigma, the fear of rejection in the other context. Once you open up and start unlocking in those meetings and talking about it, you start giving permission to everybody else to drop the mask too, and we all kind of universally realize these are all things that need to be spoken out loud for the healing to start within us, so we could show it more for our families. So I think that's beautiful.
You bring up a good point. As leaders, to create this environment, we have to go first. You call it living the standard, right?
Yeah.
So we have to show our scars, our hurts, our fears, our guilt, whatever it is, and in being vulnerable, then, as you mentioned, listen to them, like genuinely listen to understand. Give them a safe place to share, like we do at the tribe, and I think that goes a long way to encouraging men to speak up.
Amen.
Love it.
I made one word. Trust, because if you don't have trust, you can't.
That's right.
That's when I heard that one word popped in my head.
It's amazing.
So
It's amazing.
Spot on.
Joe, your turn, buddy.
I think it kind of dovetails. It's what are some common stereotypes about men that you'd like to challenge?
Wow, that's a good one.
That's a good one. That's part of what this is here, because with men, the stereotype is everything has to be great. You have to be strong. Things are going wonderful. You can't have emotions. And we try to break through that. That's a large part of what we do.
Absolutely, and that's internal to the outward, what Andrew spoke to, but also external to internal. I think that words have meaning, and I just got to address this. The combination of the words, toxic masculinity. Yes, there is a certain masculinity that is toxic. But when you marry the two, the implication is that all masculinity is toxic. And that is creating an unhealthy balance between the feminine and the masculine in our society.
Yeah.
We have to be unapologetically masculine. And what I mean by that is not the guy in the parking lot picking a fight. I'm talking about emotionally mature. I'm talking about a leader, the things we're discussing here. Step into your masculinity, men, but do it in the right way. Because let me tell you something, that word in our vernacular needs to go.
I agree.
Because it is nothing but an aggressive attack on men that puts a lot of men in the corner to feel like they cannot step into their truth and who they are authentically. And that's something unhealthy that we are trying to unwind and unlock. And I know that the intention of those words behind it isn't always aggressive. It's just become popular in as pop culture to say, but we need to get away from certain words we use because the output is not healthy for our society.